Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Mason. I'm the District Attorney for Colorado's 17th Judicial District, which includes Adams and Broomfield counties. Welcome to our town hall. This is a virtual town hall live from the DA's office in Brighton, Colorado. And I'm here tonight to just talk a little bit about some of the things that we are doing here at the DA's office and to address issues that are relevant to the public right now with regards to community safety and the criminal justice system, and also take your questions. So we're live on Facebook. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. My team will share those questions with me because I don't actually see them yet on my screen, and we will take those questions as we go. I'd like to just start out by talking a little bit about what we're doing here at the DA's office that is important for you to know. So the district attorney, first of all, I'd like to just explain a little bit about what the district attorney's office is. For anyone who may not know, the district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer for a judicial district. Colorado has 22 judicial districts. They are drawn along county lines. So the 17th judicial district is drawn along the lines of Adams and Broomfield counties, and I'm the elected district attorney for that jurisdiction. The role of the district attorney is, there are multiple roles, but one of the chief roles is to ethically prosecute all cases within a jurisdiction. So when a crime happens here in Adams County or in Broomfield County, police investigate that crime. So it may be a theft, it may be a burglary, it may be any number of things that are in the criminal statute. They investigate and then they present the results of their investigation to the district attorney's office. And then the district attorney's office, my staff, evaluates that information, evaluates the evidence in the case, and then, when appropriate, files the correct charges. Then my team of attorneys and paralegals and support staff and investigators and victim advocates all work together as we push those cases through the criminal justice system and resolve them in an ethical, fair, and just manner. Here at the DA's office in the 17th Judicial District, once again Adams and Broomfield counties, we have anywhere from 30 to 40,000 cases a year. And that can mean typically 8 to 10,000 felony cases, and the rest are typically misdemeanors, as well as traffic cases. This is a really big job. It's a big task, and we have a lot of cases that we have to work on every single day. And I have a terrific team here, and I'm really proud of the work that they do. Some of the issues that you may be hearing about in the news and perhaps in your own life are related to the rise in crime. We are seeing a rise in crime across the state. We are seeing a rise in crime across the country, and also here in the 17th Judicial District. What kinds of cases are we seeing particularly? Auto thefts have gone up dramatically. Domestic violence have gone up dramatically. So those are two top priorities for me here at the DA's office. What are we doing about those things? Let me start with domestic violence. So domestic violence, of course, is a scourge in our society, and it is a problem that has been around forever. When I took office at the DA's office, so I've been at the DA's office as a line deputy or later a chief deputy DA for going on 16 years now. But when I took office as the elected district attorney a year and a half ago, I said to my team, I really want to have a comprehensive plan for how we address domestic violence here in Adams and Broomfield counties. And so one of the first things that I did when I took office was create a unit within our office that we call the Special Victims Unit. That unit hadn't existed before I took office, and that unit is charged with specifically prosecuting and handling all, or at least the majority, I should say, of our felony and some of our misdemeanor domestic violence cases, as well as our sex assault cases and human trafficking cases. These are some of the most important cases that we prosecute here at the DA's office, and I wanted a specialized team that could work on them. In terms of addressing domestic violence specifically, what we have learned, and this includes sex assault and human trafficking as well, when you have staff, and that includes attorneys, investigators, victim advocates, with specialized knowledge in that topic area, we have greater success in the courtroom, and we have greater success in cooperation, in keeping cooperation from victims of those cases. Domestic violence victims have lots of trauma in their lives, and many domestic violence victims, unfortunately, return to their abusers. And so how do we serve them? How do we make sure that we are serving domestic violence victims and keeping somebody who has been abused from experiencing further abuse, and most importantly, from being hurt, harmed, or killed by their abusers? That's another thing that we're working on here at the DA's office, and I'm very proud to talk about one of our innovative new methods. What we're calling it is the High-Risk Domestic Violence Team. So a high-risk domestic violence team is made up of staff from here at the DA's office, as well as partners throughout the 17th Judicial District. We've piloted this program specifically in Thornton, and we have the Thornton Police Department involved, as well as victim advocates from their department and our department, but also organizations and nonprofit organizations throughout the 17th Judicial District. That includes things like Family Tree or Servicios de Raza. And our goal with the high-risk domestic violence team is to identify victims who are at particularly high risk for lethality. That's a hard word for me to have to talk about and to say, but unfortunately, many people are at risk in domestic violence relationships at a death. And I want to keep our community safe, and I want to keep victims off the autopsy table. So this high-risk domestic violence team examines cases quickly after they occur, and they roundtable them with all of the experts from the DA's office, from Family Tree, from Servicios de Raza, from the police department, to identify high-risk factors that could lead to lethality in a particular domestic violence case. And then we provide those victims with wraparound services. What's a wraparound service? Victims of domestic violence experience, as I said before, lots of trauma. But many of them, for reasons that are complicated, don't want to leave their abusers or go back to their abusers. Sometimes that relates to financial hardships. Many victims are financially reliant on their abusers, and so they can't see a path forward without having that financial security. Sometimes domestic violence victims have children that are also reliant on the financial means of the abuser. So when we talk about wraparound services, it really means that. It means providing them with family services. It means providing them sometimes with access to family lawyers so that they can pursue potential divorce or other legal methods, child custody issues, family services, sometimes immigration law advice. Those are all of the wraparound services that we seek to provide with this high-risk domestic violence team. My goal, and the goal of many of my fellow elected officials, particularly the county commissioners, our members of Congress, members of the state legislature here in the 17th Judicial District, is to eventually create what we call a family justice center. A family justice center is a one-stop shop, for lack of a better word or description, where victims of domestic violence or sex assault or human trafficking can get all the services they need to keep them safe. And we don't have a family justice center here in Adams or Broomfield counties yet. It's a successful model throughout the country. It was piloted in places like New York, Oregon, and California. And we have some here in Colorado, but we don't have one here in Adams and Broomfield. And that's the ultimate goal. And this building block of the domestic violence high-risk team that I'm talking about will hopefully lead eventually to a permanent brick-and-mortar family justice center here in the 17th Judicial District. Auto thefts. Auto thefts are high on my mind right now because they are up across Adams and Broomfield counties. They're up 400% in Broomfield County, and they're up across the Denver metro area. In fact, Colorado has one of the highest numbers of auto thefts in the union, and that is not a position that we want to be in, and that's certainly not something that we are proud of. And so what are we doing about auto thefts, and what's causing this increase in auto thefts? Well, we're still figuring out what exactly the cause is. There are numerous things. Certainly, the rise in crime nationally can be pointed back to COVID and mental health issues that many people are struggling with, financial hardships. There are lots of causes for why people commit crimes. What are we doing about auto thefts? Well, we're addressing the problem head on. So because there's been a significant increase in auto thefts here in Adams County and in Broomfield counties, we've significantly increased our prosecution of these cases. We have more than doubled the number of cases that we are filing for auto theft. I've convened an auto theft task force within my office and with partners throughout this judicial district, particularly in law enforcement, to try to address this problem from as comprehensive approach as we possibly can. There aren't any simple solutions to the auto theft problem, and quite frankly, there are some public policy issues that we need to address at the state legislature. So right now, if someone gets charged with auto theft, that crime will be delineated by either a level of felony or a misdemeanor. We have 6 classes of felony in the state of Colorado. Class 1 felony is the most serious. That's typically first-degree murder, and if someone is convicted of a Class 1 felony, they serve a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. There's Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, Class 5, and Class 6 felonies, and auto theft can be anywhere from a Class 3 felony to a Class 1 misdemeanor. And in our laws as they are currently written, that designation in terms of the degree of felony or misdemeanor is based on the value, the monetary value of the car. So if you have a car that's worth $30,000 or $40,000 and it's stolen, it would be a higher level felony versus a car that may be worth $500. That may be a Class 1 misdemeanor. I think that that's a real injustice that is built into our system at the moment. And the reason I say that is poor people, those who are the least fortunate amongst us in terms of their monetary abilities to pay for services and pay for homes and cars, when their cars get stolen, they are the least able to actually replace that car. They don't have the resources to replace that car. And yet if their car is not a very expensive car, if it's worth $500 or $800, that's going to be a misdemeanor. And so the ability for us to then hold accountable the person that stole that car is diminished and limited by the law. That's something that I hope to work on with the state legislature in the next session, and something that we also are working on at the state level with our sentencing task force, which is also something that I sit on. I'm going to start taking your questions in a second, but before I do that, I also want to talk about fentanyl. So fentanyl is one of the biggest public safety and public health crises facing our nation and facing our state right now. And I have spent a lot of time on it in the last 6 months particularly. So we in Adams County have one of the largest cases in the country of fentanyl deaths in one incident, and you've probably seen this on the news. In Commerce City, we had 5 people die from fentanyl poisoning back in February, and these 5 people clearly thought that they were taking cocaine when in fact they were ingesting fentanyl, and they all died because of it. When that happened, under the state of the law in Colorado, we did not have a statute where I could charge anyone related to that case or to another case with something called distribution of fentanyl causing death. The only things that we could explore in terms of holding someone accountable for a death that happened because of fentanyl poisoning would be in the homicide statute. And unfortunately, that was very limiting for us. First-degree murder requires prosecutors to prove after deliberation and with intent. We have to prove that someone intentionally and after deliberation killed another person. And that typically didn't apply to drug dealers. As sad as that is to say, and hard as that may be to understand, drug dealers, when they are distributing fentanyl, aren't deliberately trying to kill their clients. It's against their monetary interest to try to kill their clients, because then their clients won't keep buying from them. So that statute didn't work, and that inhibited and inhibits our ability to hold accountable people who were distributing fentanyl in this community, leading to death for our members of our community. So one of the major accomplishments of this fentanyl legislation that I and so many other people worked so hard on in this last legislative session was the addition to our felony code of a distribution of fentanyl causing death statute. I'm very proud of that. There are numerous other things that this bill does, and I don't want to get too deep into the minutia, but it's important for you to know about it. One of the things that this bill changed that we needed to change was what we call the cut marks. There are cut points for possession of fentanyl with the intent to distribute. So beforehand, there were different levels of felony that we could charge for somebody who was possessing a certain amount of fentanyl with the clear intent to try to distribute that to others. That statute had become quite outdated. The cut points for the amount of fentanyl for each of those felony designations weren't accurate or current, given the lethality of a very, very minuscule amount of fentanyl for somebody who uses it. So we were able to update that law quite dramatically, and that happened also in this fentanyl legislation. Perhaps the bill also invests a historic amount of money in treatment and prevention, monies that are long needed and long overdue and haven't existed before, and that's another significant achievement of this bill. Perhaps the most controversial element of the fentanyl legislation, which you may or may not have read about, is possession. So in 2019, this was 2 years before I took office as the elected DA, in 2019, the state legislature changed the vast majority of possession laws, so possession of drugs, illegal substances. We call them controlled substances, and that means cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, all of those illegal drugs, fentanyl, change them from felonies, for possession being a felony, to Class 1 misdemeanors. Now, you may have opinions about that change, and I have opinions about that change, and I'm happy to answer questions about it, but that was the law after 2019. During this legislative session, as we negotiated and worked on the fentanyl bill, one of the things that I and many of my colleagues said is that 4 grams of fentanyl, under current law, before the new legislation, 4 grams of fentanyl, possessing 4 grams of fentanyl, was a Class 1 misdemeanor. 4 grams of fentanyl can kill 2,000 people. 4 grams of fentanyl is extraordinarily dangerous, and that is just simply not a misdemeanor level of possession of that very scary, very dangerous drug. And so we were able to change that, and that was controversial, but the law did make it a change, so now possession of anything over 1 gram, as opposed to 4 grams, any amount over 1 gram possession of fentanyl is now a felony. And there are some built-in safeguards to that new change, particularly between 1 and 4 grams, so that we take into account whether or not somebody knew that they were possessing fentanyl or thought they were possessing something else. But in general, it's definitely an improvement in the law, and my goal all along throughout this process was to give tools, to have new tools to get this poison off the streets. And I'm hopeful that this new law will help us do that. I know there may be some people watching right now, or some people who watch this later, who say this is going back to locking people up for simple possession. I disagree with that. That's not what I think this is. This is, on the contrary, a bill to help get this fentanyl off the street and give us opportunities to give them help. I do not want to lock up low-level users. That's not what I believe in. That's not what I campaigned on when I was a candidate for this office. But I do want to get fentanyl off the streets, and I think this new law will help us do that. So that's kind of an overview of some of the hot topics right now in the criminal justice system and in public safety conversations. I'll say just a few more things before I start taking your questions. It's a tough time right now for many people in law enforcement because of funding and staffing issues. Every single police department in Adams and Broomfield counties is down staff. And that's a big challenge. And recruiting people into the law enforcement profession, recruiting people into the DA's office is a top priority for me and for many leaders. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge in an economy right now that's still dealing with COVID, to some extent post-COVID, but still dealing with COVID, where a lot of people have left the workforce. They call it the Great Resignation. I'm still trying to figure out where those people have gone. But it has become a real struggle and a real challenge to staff some of these departments, and that's making it more challenging for us to address some of the serious public safety issues that come up. and I'm happy to take questions about that as well. So let me start looking at some of the questions that are being handed to me. Okay, this question says, how strict are you being on drive-by shooters when they get caught? Are they misdemeanor or felony convictions? So that's a great question. I appreciate it. A drive-by shooting would qualify for numerous different charges. Attempted murder is the first one that comes to mind. Of course, if there's a drive-by shooting which actually leads to somebody dying, that would be first-degree murder or second-degree murder, both of which are two of the most important and most highly classified felonies in the law. There are possible other charges depending on the facts. You could charge felony menacing. But in short, a drive-by shooting is one of the most serious crimes in this jurisdiction. And to answer your question, how serious are we taking them? Those are some of the cases we take most seriously. When somebody is shooting at somebody else, gun violence is an absolute crisis in this country and a crisis in public safety nationwide. When we have the evidence of somebody conducting a drive-by shooting, we charge them with felonies and we hold them accountable for it. Thank you for that question. I still can't see your questions here, so I'm going to keep having my team share them with me. Gun violence is a hot topic right now for many, many reasons because, now I'm going to try to watch this. Here we go. Because of the number of gun-related crimes that we're seeing. And so that's something that this office focuses on an absolutely daily basis, and we treat gun crimes as some of the most serious cases and crimes that we deal with here in the office. All right. The next question, will you be prosecuting tickets given to people living in public spaces that your predecessor did not? Law enforcement needs tools to be able to keep us safe while we're walking in parks and on trails. So I think the genesis of that question is regarding camping and homeless people who are camping in public spaces. And that's a really important question, and I appreciate where it's coming from. We've been working closely with our county commissioner colleagues to try to address that particular topic. And the answer is we take those cases on a case-by-case basis. When the evidence supports prosecution and when it is just and appropriate, we certainly do that. And when it doesn't, we don't. And that is part of the nature of my job. My job is to, and the job of my staff, is to evaluate each case on a case-by-case basis, evaluate the evidence, evaluate the law, evaluate what is just, and then pursue that case accordingly. So, we're almost half an hour into this conversation. I'm not seeing any other questions. I can't tell how many people have logged on or not, but if there are more questions, please put them in the chat room or in the question box, and we'll get them back to me. It looks like I've got another one coming in now. Thank you. Nuisance neighbor law question. Why doesn't Adams County have laws to protect neighborhoods from homes with drug dealers or violent persons? So nuisance laws are not within my purview. Nuisance laws are typically done by the county. It is a fair question, and I would encourage you to share that question with the county commissioners or with your local jurisdictions. Other questions? Those were 3 or 4 good ones. I appreciate it. I'd like to talk about one other issue that's really important to me, and if there are more questions, we'll get them as they come in, and that's mental health. So the mental health crisis in this country disproportionately impacts the criminal justice system, and it impacts the criminal justice system in numerous ways. Probably the majority, certainly a significant percentage of defendants or suspects who are charged with crimes have some kind of a mental health issue that impacts them. A good portion of those who are victims of crime have mental health challenges that impact them, not the least of which is being a victim of a crime. Mental health challenges also impact those of us who work in law enforcement. I see things in my job that I cannot unsee. I go to crime scenes, I go to homicide scenes, just as police officers do, just as detectives do, as crime scene analysts do, and they all see things that are hard to block out and hard to just turn off when you go home. And that is impacting burnout and impacting the exodus of people from this profession. So I have really prioritized addressing the mental health crisis in the criminal justice system and in our state, sometimes in ways that a DA hasn't been involved before. So last year, for example, I teamed up with one of our outstanding representatives, Daphne Michelson-Janae, to work on a bill that would make getting a mental health exam the same as getting an annual physical, requiring insurance companies to pay for an annual mental health exam just the way that they pay for an annual physical. Many, many people who come into the criminal justice system come in because they have never been treated for mental health problems. And if we can find and treat people who have mental health issues early, my hope is that that will keep them out of the criminal justice system altogether. I've also made a priority of talking about mental health and encouraging people to get help who have mental health issues here at the district attorney's office. It's something that people who are in law enforcement, lawyers, victim advocates, police officers, don't usually like to talk about. We don't like to talk about going home and not being able to get images out of our heads. We don't like to talk about how that impacts our ability to interact with our family members. And so what people need is treatment. And so we have increased dramatically the opportunities for treatment for folks at the district attorney's office. And I've also worked to secure funding for greater resources for treatment for law enforcement officers across the state. So that's something that I'm really very proud of. Are there any other questions for me? We've got one, it looks like, that's coming in. What are you doing about prosecuting street racers, especially those who hurt or kill in their races? So street racing is a huge problem, and I'm sure that you have seen the news of a very high-profile case just out of Aurora over the last couple days. I can't talk about the facts of that case or talk about particular decisions or issues within that case, but I can certainly talk generally about what you're asking about. Street racing is becoming very popular amongst young people, and we, of course, have to do something about it. I can tell you that our laws regarding street racing are pretty limited. Street racing is a misdemeanor or a traffic offense. So the punishment or penalty for street racing is pretty low. And of course we take those cases seriously, but you can only prosecute them to the extent that the law allows, which is certainly what we do here at the DA's office. But I do think that the legislature needs to have a conversation about street racing, how it's classified under criminal law, and what the penalties should be, so that those of us in law enforcement who are trying to address that have the tools that we need to do so. Thank you for that question. Do we have another one coming in? Okay. Will you please explain how you handle bail for people here illegally? So when somebody is charged with a crime or when they are arrested for a crime, every person who is in this country, whether they are here as an American citizen or whether they are here without documentation, is entitled to bail. There are limited circumstances, such as first-degree murder, where we can ask for someone to be held without bail, but otherwise the law does guarantee that under certain factors that the judges have to consider, that people are entitled to bail. We do not treat somebody who is without documentation differently than somebody who is an American citizen. We treat them equally when it comes to making arguments about what an appropriate bail is. I can tell you that we often get into pretty serious arguments with magistrates and judges about what that bail should be. And ultimately, it is not the authority of the district attorney or my staff to decide what a specific bond or bail amount should be set at. There is a schedule, we call it the bond schedule, that we often argue for, and sometimes we ask for bond to be set above schedule. Defense attorneys and public defenders typically ask for things to be set below that bond schedule, and then a judge or a magistrate decides. But to answer that question again, we look at every case individually, and we consider the alleged crime We consider the person's criminal history. We consider their likelihood or unlikelihood of returning to court. And we consider the danger that they present to the community when we make our arguments for what that bond should be set at. And then that bond is set by a magistrate or a judge. Other questions? Will you be having any more meetings like this? And is there a possibility of doing this in person? The answer is yes. We're going to continue to do town hall meetings. Transparency is very important to me. It's something that I campaigned on. And so we will continue to do these. And I would prefer to do them in person. Given some of the rise in COVID recently, we thought that virtual would be the better option for right now. But I do hope to do them in person and also virtually in the months and years to come. Next question. My assumption would be if crime is rising, then your office would be prosecuting more cases than in the last few years. Is that the case? Will you post the number of cases prosecuted for each of the past 5 years by the DA's office? Our numbers are up, and we do have statistics that back that up, and yes, we are prosecuting more cases than we have in years before. The statistics do vary depending on the crime. So there are some areas of crime where our numbers are down, where crime in those areas are down, whereas there are other areas like motor vehicle theft that are up. Those statistics are kept typically by police agencies and by state agencies. We don't have a very good mechanism at the DA's office currently to be able to catch all those statistics and post them, but it is something that I'm working on. So that's not going to happen overnight, but I would like to be able to have the public have access to the numbers of cases that we are filing so that you can see where those numbers are and what we're doing about them. Thank you for that question. Any other questions that have come in? All right. Going once, twice. If you have any other questions, please submit them now. Otherwise, I appreciate those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with me this evening. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to contact my office. The District Attorney's Office phone number is on our website. That's adamsbroomfieldda.org. Once again, adamsbroomfieldda.org. Looks like we've got one more question coming in. Okay. Catalytic converter thefts. Are we looking at the places that buy them or the thieves? So that's a great question. And the state legislature in this recent session increased penalties for catalytic converter thefts. And my office prosecutes those who are stealing them. In terms of looking at who's buying them, that's part of the investigation for sure. But to answer your question, we focus our energies on holding accountable those who are, where we have evidence for those who are stealing them. There are also provisions in law that used to be called something fancy, which was theft by receiving, where you can prosecute somebody who is taking or receiving stolen goods or stolen items, even if they weren't the person that actually committed the theft. And we take those cases seriously too. Property crime is up right now. Property crime is a serious problem and one that we're taking very seriously here at the DA's office. Not seeing any other questions, I want to say thank you to all of those of you again who joined us this evening. And I'll just do one more plug for our website. On our website, we have resources regarding everything that we do here at the DA's office. Victim services, what we're doing on fentanyl, resources for prevention of crime, such as techniques for making sure that your house is safe or that your car is safe and that your car doesn't get stolen. We also have updates on what we're doing on gun violence, what we're doing on domestic violence, sexual assaults, human trafficking, really the whole gamut of what we do here at the DA's office. So I encourage you to go to our website, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter for regular updates on what we do here at the DA's office. Once again, that website is adamsbroomfieldda.org. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Be safe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.